Give everyone at your next event a super awesome mix with our mixtape cards. Each one comes with a personalized message and photo along with a QR code that takes them to your mix on whatever streaming service they use: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or YouTube. They're perfect for birthdays, weddings, graduations, and even holiday cards. Go to superawesomemix.com/mixtapes and bring back the magic of the mixtape at your next special occasion. Welcome back to another Super Awesome Mix. My name is Matt Sidholm, alongside my co-host and co-founder of Super Awesome Mix, Sam Abusalbi. Sam, how we doing this week?
Doing real well. I got to put together a mix that I really love. This was a lot of fun, actually. And it's funny because A, we haven't done an introduction mix in a while.
Mm-hmm.
B, this one was a little bit last minute to put together between our recording and the plan. And it, as you pointed out, it took me like all of 15 minutes to do it.
It was remarkable. Yeah. It was like, okay, yeah, no, let's do this, and I'll just get to the topic. It is an intro to Blink-182, and this is Sam's intro mix. So he'll be talking about every track. I will introduce every track, but yeah, we kind of decided on Blink-182, and then like 10 minutes later, I was like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, put that together when you get a chance. And then it's like, oh, there it is. It took it's as if you had it just holstered and ready to go. I mean, I think it took me longer to put together an intro to Bruce than it did for you to put this one together.
Well, to be fair, Blink-182 has a lot of albums. They do not have a Bruce level number of albums.
Okay, that's fair. Bad example. All right. Yeah.
You don't need to visit the Library of Congress to be able to pull down.
There's no biopic coming out on Blink-182?
Not yet. There really should be, though. It's a fun group.
I bet it is. Yeah.
I would watch that.
Well, do you have a preamble here? Do you want to introduce us to the band, or should we get into the mix?
I do.
What do you think? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So Blink-182 was formed in 1992. The first album was 94. Originally, it was Tom DeLonge, Mark Hoppus, and Scott Raynor. Eventually, Scott Raynor would be replaced by Travis Barker, and I would argue the Tom DeLonge, Mark, and Travis mix is like what we mostly think of when we think of Blink-182. They certainly had some of the largest albums in that time period, and just like very cultural, huge cultural impact, this little trio. And then, of course, Tom leaves. Mark is very unhappy about this. There's some debate whether or not there were certain songs and albums that we'll get to that were written specifically about this kind of breakup, or if it was, just whatever. But he was replaced by Matt Skiba of Alkaline Trio for a couple of albums. And then famously last year or 2 years ago, they came back together for a reunion album. So we'll get to all of that over the course of these 12 songs. I would say, obviously, it's really difficult, even though I put this together in 15 minutes, it's very difficult to say that like these are the only songs, or, these are the best songs or whatever, like, especially off of their earlier albums. I would honestly recommend listening to every single one of them, like start to finish. They are excellent. And they were part of a huge cultural moment of this kind of pop punk uprising. When I think about them, I also immediately think about Green Day, and I feel like both of them were just, and Weezer, and like they were just all in the spotlight and in the sun. So I grew up listening to them, and so whenever I finally decided on doing an intro to Blink-182, it was like, I know exactly the songs that I want to feature on here.
Yeah, and it's interesting you kind of threw those two into the genre as well, like Green Day and Weezer, because they're definitely contemporaries, but all three have very distinctive sounds, right? Yeah. Like none of those bands sound like each other, even though they all kind of, you're right, kind of fall into that same category. But yeah, this is going to be interesting for me because this is a band like I've always known, and I knew most of the songs on this mix, but didn't know that they had kind of interchanged members like that. To me, it's always been Mark Hoppus, Tom DeLonge, and Travis Barker. Like I've never thought of them as any other trio. So it's kind of interesting that they're having these ins and outs. So, but I'm certainly a more casual fan. All right, let's get into it. Your first track, it is Carousel.
Yes, I was waiting for you to say by who it was.
By Blink-182. Okay.
my ADHD brain it's not working today. So I wonder, yeah, by who, Matt? Who are we talking about? I didn't just talk about them for 4 minutes. Okay. So Carousel off of their first album. It's funny, this is quite literally a garage band. Like they formed in the garage. This was co-written by Mark and Tom, who like just kind of started riffing with one another and then wrote this song. And you can, I think, hear that in this song really, really well. It's so interesting. You know, we talk about like Foo Fighters, which was just Dave Grohl, or it was just Foo Fighter, you know, like at the beginning.
Right.
Like, and then how his sound evolved, but obviously stayed the same even with that evolution, but it just matured. And I think that this one is, you hear that kind of fun of literally a couple kids writing some music together and putting it out. It doesn't have like the same polish, but they have a lot of the same ideas that are going to come through for the rest of their career. And, you know, now it's been a career of over 30 years in this band. So I just really love this track. I think it gives you immediately a sense of like who they are, what they're going to, you know, sing about, what they're going to talk about, and their sound of, you know, growing up that punk sound to make it, I would say, a little bit more accessible, a little bit more mainstream for sure. So I think this is like hopefully a good introduction to them.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely, when you hear this, it sounds like Blink-182, right? Like, and I think it's the guitar and just kind of the pace of the songs, right? Like they don't
Yes.
play a lot of slow songs. Like there's going to be some speed, there's going to be some energy. And you could tell kind of how they broke through, I think, because I could imagine even, you know, you hire this garage band to play a club or like some small show, and they're just bringing so much energy that the crowd is just going crazy. So it's like, all right, let's bring those guys out again. And they just kind of kept doing that. So, yeah, really impressive from their early work. But you can also tell, I think you talked about kind of evolution. Even though topically, I think there's a through line, I think you can tell vocally that this is much earlier on, and how the vocals will evolve and get a lot better as they sort of mature. But here it's like the vocals are a little rough. They're not bad, but just when you listen to this whole mix, there's definitely a distinction.
Yeah, they sound young in that sense, right?
Yes.
They just sound young.
All right, track 2. I think it's off of the same album. This is Dammit.
I think this is actually off of their next album, Dude Ranch. But this was their lead single off of that one. And yeah, you immediately can tell like their voices are more polished here. Their sound is more developed. You know, this is a song about quote unquote growing up. You know, I guess this is growing up. And I just think it's, again, you know, they're starting to kind of lean into this whole thing of them just singing about their experience. In this case, it's like a song about a breakup. But just outgrow, you know, you could take it about outgrowing people and just dealing with like the fallout of things. And, you know, I guess this is growing up, you know, like you're just going to have to deal with this over and over again. So I think, again, they're very accessible and have been so successful in their careers because they have this really fun, energetic sound, but they sing about very accessible, everyday things that we're all dealing with. And they do it in kind of a fun way. So, yeah, I think this is just a song again that I listen to all the time and really enjoyed. And this whole album, Dude Ranch, is also excellent. It was hard to pick just a handful of them, but this is one of my favorite ones. And it makes sense because this was their lead single, so it got a lot of airtime.
Yeah, and I was going to say maybe their most famous song, or at least one of a handful of their most famous songs. But yeah, you're right about the theme of this one being, you know, about a breakup, and it's so universal. And I think for this genre, right, like this is not a genre you'd immediately connect to songs about relationships. And I think of a song we featured recently on a new music mix, Chapel Roan's The Subway, which is about moving on from a relationship and all of that. And to think like, okay, these are two very distinctive songs, right? And decades apart, but the theme is the same, even though they're in very different genres and sung in very different ways. So I just think that I think you're spot on, and that's kind of what maybe set them apart, is that they were willing to sing about things that are a little bit more universal, but also still stick true to the way they want to play music.
Yeah, to their sound. Absolutely.
All right, track 3. This is a fun one. This is A New Hope.
Yes, off the same album, Dude Ranch. This is Mark Hoppus's Ode to Princess Leia from the Star Wars franchise, of course. But I loved the song because, you know, I was at the time a not even a teenager yet. I was a preteen actually in 1997. But you could replace Princess Leia with anyone that you're crushing on that seems out of reach, right? Like, and I think that's what makes his song so universal is like he's literally singing about how he wants to do anything for Princess Leia. I love the lines here. Even though I'm not as cool as Han, I still want to be your man, Han Solo. But he kind of tweaks the name to get the rhyme in there. But I just think it's so funny, growing up, obviously went through that arc of like, having these crushes and these girls that felt unattainable. You're like in middle school and then high school. And so this became kind of an anthem for me of just like having these these faraway crushes, similar to having a crush on a fictional character from a movie.
Well, and yeah, it's funny because I'm such a nerd. I see A New Hope and I immediately think Star Wars. Then you get into the song and it's like, oh, it is about Star Wars. Okay.
Right.
But I also thought this was brilliant because you got to figure at every like Comic-Con party, like this song comes on, right? Like, I mean, this has got to be just an anthem. So I thought it was a brilliant piece of marketing on their part too, that it's like, we're going to put this song out that there's going to be a very niche audience that will always play this song.
Yeah, absolutely. And they probably had, I mean, I know Star Wars was really big, obviously, in that time period, but this was the prequels and the sequels and just the massive franchise that it's become, right?
It was probably right around the time of the re-releases, right? Because they kind of digitized the original movies and put them back out in theaters. So I'm guessing this came out about the time that A New Hope and Empire were back in the theaters for a time in the late 90s or so. So yeah, that's maybe was the inspiration. Who knows? All right, track 4. This is the party song.
All right, so now we enter like a couple of albums here with just tremendous album names. This one is Enema of the State, which is just so good. I really appreciate that one. Yes, so this is off of their next album. It's one of their best albums, in my opinion. I think this one is also, again, another very relatable song. I listen to this one a lot. The lyrics that they sing that have just always been, stuck in my head, the chorus, like, so when you see her standing there with green eyes and long blonde hair, she won't be wearing underwear, and you'll discover this girl's not the one. She'll never be fun. You should just turn and run because you'll find that some girls try too hard. And it's so catchy the way they sing it. But I think for me, it just became this like warning sign that there are people, in this case, it's a girl, it doesn't matter about the gender, but there are people that will basically trap you. And like you're drawn to them, but they are a trap and you should just turn and run. And it's a lesson that I learned many, many times in my life. Unfortunately, I should have paid more attention to the lyrics, but I just think it's so fun. But yeah, ultimately this is about, a song going to a party, feeling like you really don't want to be at this party and just seeing all these people that are just, vying for attention in the worst ways often. So I think, again, a very relatable and universal song being sung in a fun way.
What I loved about this one is just as you go through their evolution at this point in their lives, now they're kind of famous. Mm-hmm. And instead of that like teen angst that you got from their early work, now it's like, they've been famous for a little bit and they're like, this is all BS. What are we doing? And so that's what I kind of heard this as, was now they're just sort of coming into fame and discovering how fake it all is a little bit. And just that line, some girls try too hard. So it was great. It's a great like energy. You could play it at a party. It's called the party song. But yeah, when I was listening to this as just the entire intro mix, I kind of took it as like maybe an inflection point in their lives, even, that they're just sort of looking around going, what are we doing now?
Yeah, I really like that. Yes, I could see that.
All right, track 5, big vibe change here. This is Adam's song.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about Adam's song before, or maybe we've certainly talked about how funny it is that this song is preceded by a song called Dysentery Gary. About, like on title alone, it's hilarious that like they can go from a song called Dysentery Gary to this very serious, somber song. Dysentery Gary is about a guy who like basically sucks so much that he just gives diarrhea out, similar to what dysentery does, which I think is so funny. And I feel bad for all the Garys out there at the time of this release, because I think that must have stuck. But you know what? Like this song again, it shows that they had more than just silliness in them. They had an ability to sing about very serious things, about very emotional things. They changed their sound just enough to where it just works so well. Like I think this is a very emotional song, even just in how it sounds. But yeah, this is kind of like it's been talked about as a potential suicide note. This was him dealing with his own depression touring. And he literally sings, the tour is over. I've survived. I can't wait till I get home to pass the time in my room alone. Just trying to deal with the whole whirlwind of it all and literally just wanting some alone time. And we've talked a lot about songs and bands where they lament just how difficult touring is. So it's really interesting. I've never really considered that, but it sounds not fun. Like I can imagine it's just exhausting.
Yeah, probably. I think it's like any sort of, if you ever taken a lot of business trips right in a row where it's just like, man, it seems like, man, you're here and then you're there and wow, this is great. But it's like, you're kind of just like airport, hotel, office, airport, hotel, office. And like
Yes.
for them, their office is this large arena where they get to sing and play their instruments. But I mean, it kind of is airport, hotel, or tour bus, wherever it is they're getting around.
Yeah. Yeah. No, even you just saying that has kind of depressed me. Now I need to go. I just need a minute. I do not like business travel. It's like my least favorite form of travel. It's not
Yeah, it's a little
enjoyable.
bit of a grind. It's a little
It is
bit
a
of a
grind.
grind.
It is a grind.
But yeah, Adam's song for me, I mean, this is my favorite one of their songs just because of how much of a departure it is from their normal sound. And I would never have thought that they would put out such an emotionally resonant song. The line, please tell mom it's not her fault,
Yeah.
like just
Oh,
always gets me. Like it's just, so yeah, this is really well done for them. And also, like, again, just based on the fact that, they probably felt this way as a teenager, that to put together this type of song, and I'm sure it's probably helped a lot of kids out there who are going through whatever they're going through in their teenage years to hear something like this from an artist that they're kind of into. So I don't know. To me, it's always kind of top of my list and top of mind when I think of Blink-182, and just really, I mean, just kind of blows me away that this band, like you said, track right before it is Dysentery Gary, is going to put together something like this and put it out there. So
yeah, that is so deeply emotionally resonant. Yeah. Like
yeah.
it's really interesting. Yeah. That was great.
All right, track 6. This is The Rock Show.
Yes, this is now off of a 2001 album, vying for my all-time favorite album name, "Take Off Your Pants and Jacket," meaning the actual the actual pieces of clothing, pants and a jacket.
Of course, of course.
Yes, and there's no other meaning here, Matt. They just want you to.
I can't even think of one. Can't even think of one.
It was really hard for me to pick a song off this album. I think this album is just so good, and I listened to it a million times on repeat. This is obviously, I would argue, the most popular song off of this album. It was played a lot. It's very, very sing-alongable. The music video is also pretty entertaining because it's them basically blowing like $500,000 worth of this like investment in the music video and just recording everything that they did with it, like handing money out, doing like throwing it out the window of this bus that they rented. I mean, just like crazy stuff like that. Very punk of him, right? I think is like a kind of just a perfect thing for them to do. But yeah, I think it's just, again, a fun song about meeting like the so-called perfect person. You can't wait to introduce her to your parents, like all this kind of stuff, or and how cool this girl is that you met at the rock show. So I think this is just a really fun song, and it's a great album where they just are having a lot of fun still.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's just right there in their vibe where it's just like, it's fun and it's clearly like just rock and roll music and, singing about another relatable situation of, meeting someone at the rock show. All right, track 7. This is Feeling This.
Yes, so 2003. This is now like the era of dark Blink-182. This is their self-titled album, Blink-182. And yeah, like they just had a massive vibe shift. I think one of them had, I'm blanking on the details of this, but there was like an airplane crash. And I think that just made him realize like, oh wow, like it's like the mortality of it all. And then like we go through this era of kind of these like darker albums, and then of course there was like the split out with Plus 44 and Angels and Airwaves that also had very similar sounds to Blink. So definitely like an influence here. But I again loved this album. I listened to this a lot. This was in college for me. I just think it's a very cool evolution of their sound, and it works. I think oftentimes bands can change their sound and everyone's like, oh, like I don't like this, go back to what you were doing before. But I feel like this was really well received. I think people were kind of looking for this, and I think also, given the context and history, it kind of makes sense. 2001, obviously the end of 2001, we had September 11th, we were dealing with multiple wars, like there was a lot going on, and I don't think that anyone was potentially in the mood at that point for like a punky, silly, whatever, right? So I think like there was an appetite for more dark material, which is like we saw that in superhero movies too, right? They all turned dark, right? Like Batman went from being this like campy, goofy villain or sorry, superhero to being like a very emotional, like Christian Bale, like
right. Introspective.
Yeah. So we saw this like massive vibe shift as a culture. So I think this reflects that. But it just works really well. I think it's a great song. What I loved and learned about this song that I never knew, but there's a part where he is actually, you hear him kind of like scream singing, but he sounds like really distant. And they literally recorded him 15 feet away from the microphones, like screaming into the mic from that distant. And I just think, again, like I'm always so amazed at the cleverness of how some of these sounds come together. Because in my head, they're like just sitting there doing it on a computer or like manipulating,
right.
like manipulating things literally in an app like GarageBand. But it's like, no, they're like physically playing with spaces and sounds to get some of these things. And it's just really cool to learn about that.
Yeah, this one, it's interesting. You kind of pointed all that out because I'm, more of a casual fan, but I definitely noticed the shift in sound on this one. And, they do have a unique sound. This one almost sounded maybe a little rappy a little bit with just the way they kind of get after the lyrics in this one versus maybe some of their other songs. Kind of reminded me of the band Anthrax, if you're familiar with them at all. Because
I haven't heard of them.
Yeah, there's kind of this, I don't know, almost like metal sound, like they pick up the speed a little bit, but they're also still kind of talking pretty fast, and I don't know, it was a cool sound, but I definitely noticed the sound shift. So it's interesting that all that was going on with the band at that time because it definitely comes through in their music. All right, track 8, this is Stockholm Syndrome.
Yes, off the same album. I think this might be my favorite song off of the album, although it was very hard to pick. I ended up settling on this one because we very recently did a Stockholm Syndrome mix, so I thought it only appropriate to bring a song literally called Stockholm Syndrome.
Yes. It's good cross promotion. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, check out that episode if you haven't listened to it yet because it's pretty fun. But yeah, this is like almost like a punk duet song, because they're like singing at each other, and there was a little bit of that in the last track as well, where you get like Mark and Tom's voice like overlapping a bit, which I think is really cool. But this is just a very powerful song. Like I love the lines. I'm sick with apprehension. I'm crippled from exhaustion. And I dread the moment when you finally come to kill me. So even though this person is like tired, exhausted, they still have this like desire to live and this will to live. And that's ultimately like what Stockholm Syndrome is about, because it's believed to be like a psychological phenomenon that you will start to, like your captor as a survival instinct, because like your body basically is training is like subconsciously is like, if you befriend this person, they might let you live. And so I think that those lines really kind of capture that mood and feel. So yes, I think again, it's like a very powerful song, and they're so good at this sound. I would say.
Yeah, and I think the songwriting in this one kind of stood out to me because similar to A New Hope, where they kind of had a theme and sort of wrote lyrics around it and still kind of came out with a sort of relatable song. Like this one, it's called Stockholm Syndrome, and there's a number of references in the lyrics to like being sick or diseases or whatever. And that's not exactly what this song is about, like it's not literally about kind of being sick, but yeah, just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of well done, I thought, on the song lyric side, is that they're able to kind of say, hey, we're going to build it around this theme. We're even going to make it maybe make people chuckle here and there, but like like we're going to cleverly write it, but it's actually this overarching theme that we want to kind of get across. So I think it's really well done in that sense. All right, track 9. This is Natives.
Yes, so now we are in 2011. It's been a while since they released an album. This is off of the album Neighborhoods. It's not one of my favorites of theirs, but it's still a decent one. And this is one of my favorite songs off of it, which is why I chose it. But I really love this line in particular in the song. It's why I picked it. But he sings, "I am a child inside. Back up and give me some room." And I just think that that is such a powerful line because a lot of artists deal with a lot of criticism. Like, you're a very public figure, and people can get mad at you for all kinds of reasons, whether it's deserved or not. And I think ultimately, like, we forget that they are also people. Yes, they are personas, they're artists, like they're public, but at the center of that all, they are still human beings, and in a lot of ways we are still like our inner child, and we can get hurt just the same as we could whenever we were younger. So I think that line is really powerful in this song, and again, just a very relatable thing, because anytime you find yourself kind of being pushed against, or people pushing against you, like, there's a part of you where you're just like, please just give me some space, like, give me some room. So I think that's a very powerful line there.
And I was impressed in this one that, this is 20 years on in their career, or thereabouts, and now they're world famous, right? Like, they've made it. And yet there's still this kind of, like you said, inner child, this sort of misunderstood teenager that kind of led them maybe to start a rock band. And that's still there, right? Like, it's still kind of there, and it's still kind of coming through in their lyrics and their music, even though their circumstances are vastly different. And now the cool kids from high school would do anything to be them, right? But they still don't necessarily feel that way. That hasn't changed in their brain. So just really interesting song from that perspective. All right, track 10. This is Bored to Death.
Yeah, so now we're like really jumping ahead, doing single songs off of the next several albums. But this one is off of the album California. So now it's 2016. So another long break, 5 years between them. Because obviously early in the 90s and early 2000s, they were just kind of releasing on a schedule every 2 to 3 years, more or less. And now they're certainly taking longer breaks. This one notably now features Matt Skiba from Alkaline Trio, because Tom left in 2015. And this is the one where there's like a large debate online about whether or not he's singing about, like, this is like Mark dealing with Tom's departure. Or it's just about a relationship, like a normal relationship, or just a traditional one, because he uses like the she and her pronouns in it. So everyone's like, no, there's no way it can be about about him.
It's impossible. He would he would be much more literal than that, right?
Right. They've never heard of like a metaphor. But either way, what's funny is, like, I didn't know any of that. Why I liked this song is there's actually a couple of remixes of it that are really good, and I would play them in my spin classes, because this was around the time that I was a spin instructor. And I just think it works really well, because it's just got, again, super fast pace. Like, the sound is still more or less the same. Like, it still is going to sound like Blink, even without Tom there, but different, right? It's like Blink, but like a little different, but still mostly there. So I just think it's interesting how that evolved.
Yeah, and having the backstory now kind of explains a little bit, like a line like "It's a long way back to 17," right? Where it's like maybe he's looking back at when maybe things were probably much simpler than their lives at that point, right?
Yeah.
But I also think what stood out here is kind of like they talk, the title's Bored to Death. And I think a lot of adults, whether they want to admit it or not, never realized how boring some things would be once you're an adult, like things we have to do. But it's like, nope, super boring. And like they could fall into that trap, really. Like, if you don't take control of your life and kind of make sure it doesn't, like, just go down that road. I think this could definitely happen. So maybe I thought that was interesting, because now they're fully adults, right?
Right.
And so I kind of thought, like, that's what maybe stood out here, was just sort of the thinking about this is just kind of, why isn't this more exciting now? And it's like, but again, it's just a good job by them sort of making a life, because they live a life none of us lead, right?
Right.
But they're still kind of, with songs like this, sort of connecting to people, which I think is really good. All right, track 11. This one is Blame It on My Youth.
Yeah, so now we fast forward again another 4 years. This is 2019, off of their album Nine, which I believe is actually their eighth studio album. So that's real nice and confusing. It's nine if you count like the re-release of their first album, I believe, but it's eight if you just count like novel new songs. So I
Very
think
punk
that's,
of them, right? To
yeah,
just
very
kind of
punk. Yeah,
throw things off like that. Fine, we'll call it Nine. I don't care.
exactly. Um, So yes, I this is another Mark and Matt one. Tom has not rejoined the band yet, but I really, really love this song. I love the lines here. I find them also very relatable now that I've like aged alongside them all these years later. So the lines here, like, I was raised on a rerun. I was bored to death, so I started a band. Cut my teeth on a safety dance. My attention span never stood a chance. Um, so many relatable things in just these four lines, right? Like Safety Dance, great song, which is awesome, or great band, right? They were a group.
No,
Can't
I think
remember.
no, Men Without Hats sang
Men
the
Without
Safety
Hats. Yeah,
Dance. Yeah,
I always
yeah.
like, yeah, this was like back in Napster days when I was listening to it, so I never was sure which
Who
which
was
direction
singing
it went.
what? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
exactly.
fair.
Who was the
That's
band and
fair.
what was the song? Um, Raised on a rerun. I feel like I was raised on reruns, like just watching
Yeah.
at the time, like it was all the like 50s and 60s were the oldies. Now, of course, the oldies are like Fresh Prince and Bel-Air and like
Right.
all the shows
Friends. Yeah.
Friends, right? Exactly. And my attention span never stood a chance. Obviously, we're all dealing with that. Like our lives are just very, very short clips of things. So the other line, of course, I have to shout out is "You can never block my shine. I've been lost since 1999." If you've been a long time listener of the show, you know how much I love the year 1999 and the music that came out of it. So this is also one that goes straight to my heart.
That's the exact line I wrote down. I was like, this has got to be why this song is on here, because you are such a fan of the year 1999. And I feel like maybe in some ways you have been lost since then. And just like we could never get back to that
Yeah.
magical year in music. Yeah.
No, it's true. We can't.
All right. Well, let's bring this home. Track 12. This is Anthem, Part 3.
Yeah. So this is off of their latest album in 2023. It just came out. This is like a reunion album. And so so Tom is now back in the band, which is great. And yeah, so Mark had been unfortunately diagnosed with cancer in 2021, pretty late stage cancer. And you see that in a lot of this album is just like this, I think that's like a big part, most likely, of the reunion of, again, like our dealing with our own mortality, dealing with our own aging, realizing that it's not worth, ideally it's not worth holding these grudges or whatever the reasons were or are for like not reconnecting with people. But I just think it's a very powerful song. He sings here like, "This time I won't be complacent. The dreams I gave up and wasted, a new high, a new ride, and I'm on fire." I just think that's very powerful. This realization of like, I'm not going to be complacent anymore. I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to waste this time. So I also really love, Mark singing here. "And after you had the time of your life, flatlined and led towards the life, you'll despair the wreckage and find no one gave an F that you died." And again, I think that's also a really powerful realization that many of us have, is like, people come and go all the time. Like this life is it feels like a lot, but it is a little blip in a very, very long timeline. And so I think in some ways, like we've talked about, that can either make you feel really small and crush you, or that can actually make you feel like you can do whatever you want, and you should enjoy this life as best you can. So I think it's a very powerful song here.
Yeah. And, after hearing a couple songs from them and, that talk about how short life is, I think this one, I don't know, is kind of hopeful, which I don't think you get as much of from some of their other tracks about this, right? Like it is introspective in that same way, but also I thought it was a good one to go out on, just because it is kind of a high note, and it is like, hey, everything's out in front of you. And what a cool song for them to produce, almost 30 years into their career, to kind of say, yeah, look, there's still something out there, and you could change and take advantage of everything around you. So yeah, really, really cool way to go out. So well done there.
Awesome.
All right, so there you have it. Another super awesome mix for your collection. This time an intro to Blink-182, probably long overdue for a super fan like Sam. But Join us on social media. Let us know what we missed out on at Super Awesome Mix on Instagram and Threads, as well as on YouTube. Check out the video releases of this podcast, as well as all of our shows on the network, as well as old clips that we're putting out there. So much stuff. So get out there, like and subscribe on everything. We'll get to work on our next mixes. So for Sam, this is Matt. We'll see you next time. Super Awesome Mix is brought to you by DLM. Make shopping easy with DLM, the one-stop shop for all your casual clothing needs. Shop DLMsupplyco.com and enter the promo code AWESOME at checkout to save 15% off your first purchase. That's DLMsupplyco.com.